So, what if the future of war isn't really about bigger, more expensive weapons? What if it's about thousands of small, smart, and, yeah, disposable ones? Well, that's the whole idea behind one of the Pentagon's most radical new plans, the Replicator Initiative. We're talking about a massive, autonomous drone army, and honestly, it could completely rewrite the rules of modern warfare.
It all really comes down to this one huge question. What do you do when a potential rival can just outproduce you? More ships, more missiles, more people, just more of everything. It's a seriously tough problem, and it's the core strategic dilemma the U.S. Department of Defense is wrestling with right now.
And that right there is the central problem. You see, for decades, the U.S. strategy was pretty simple. Have the most advanced, the most sophisticated tech out there. But the game is changing. It's not just about quality anymore. It's also about quantity. It's becoming a game of sheer mass.
And look, this isn't some abstract idea. Former Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks put it plainly. She said this initiative is a direct response to strategic competition, and it's specifically aimed at overcoming China's advantage in what the Pentagon calls mass. The whole goal is to find a totally new way to level the playing field.
So, what's the Pentagon's big, crazy idea? It's called the Replicator Initiative, and the plan is intense. Field thousands of autonomous systems, we're talking across air, land, and sea, all by August 2025. It's a huge bet on the idea that sometimes quantity is its own kind of quality.
Now, the key concept here is this word, attributable, and this is a massive shift in thinking. We're not talking about billion-dollar aircraft carriers or fighter jets that you have to protect at all costs. No, we're talking about systems that are cheap enough and numerous enough that you can actually afford to lose them in a fight.
And if you're wondering where this idea came from, you really don't have to look any further than the war in Ukraine. That number right there, 10,000, that's the estimated number of drones Ukraine has reportedly been using every single month. It's a powerful, real-world lesson in how a massive number of cheap systems can counter a larger, more traditional force.
And you can see just how fast they're trying to move on this. The whole thing was unveiled in August 2023 with a super aggressive goal. Just a year later, the Pentagon was already adding a new focus, counter-drone systems, which just shows how quickly the strategy is evolving. And all of this with the clock ticking towards that ambitious August 2025 deadline. So what's the actual theory of the fight here? Well, you can think of it as a strategy of death by 1,000 cuts. Instead of relying on a few huge, powerful hammers, the idea is to completely overwhelm an adversary with a distributed, resilient, and massive swarm of threats. It really breaks down into 3 key goals. First, spread out your power. Don't put all your eggs in a few very expensive baskets. Instead, have thousands of cheap ones. That makes you way more resilient. Second, this makes your forces a much harder target. It's a lot harder to hit 1,000 small things than one big one. And finally, and this is so important, it creates a terrible economic problem for your adversary. Imagine forcing them to use a multi-million-dollar missile to shoot down a $10,000 drone. That's a losing game for them every time. And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from former Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks just says it all. This isn't just about cool new tech. The stated goal, right there in black and white, is to directly overcome the Chinese military's advantage in mass. It's a strategic counter for a very specific problem.
Okay, so the vision is ambitious. It's even revolutionary. But what about the reality? The path from a great idea to something you can actually use in the field is always filled with challenges, and Replicator is facing some very, very big questions.
And here's the first major hurdle. And wow, it is a big one. The goal was thousands of systems in the field by summer 2025. But according to one former defense official, the reality so far is only in the hundreds. That is a huge gap between the promise and the actual progress on the ground.
And the challenges don't stop there. Congress has a bunch of concerns. For one, they're struggling to get enough details to do their jobs and oversee the program. The total cost? It's a huge unknown, which makes people worry it could siphon money away from other critical programs. And then there are the basic questions, like will these things even work effectively at long ranges or in bad weather? But the biggest risk might just be the Pentagon's own bureaucracy. This quote from military analyst Bill Greenwald really hits the nail on the head. He basically argues that the Pentagon's own system for buying stuff is just too slow and too rigid to deliver on Replicator's super-fast timeline.
This is what they call the Valley of Death, where promising new tech dies on the vine before it can ever be produced and fielded at scale.
So where does all this leave us? Well, what we're watching with the Replicator Initiative is this fascinating high-stakes clash between a truly forward-thinking idea and the immense, heavy weight of institutional reality.
And make no mistake, the vision behind Replicator is absolutely bold. You could even argue it's absolutely necessary. In this new era of military competition, it's a clear attempt to be smarter, faster, and more innovative.
But that bold vision is just slamming head-on into the very system it's supposed to revolutionize. The Pentagon is trying to innovate at startup speed, while still operating as a massive, slow-moving bureaucracy. It's a tough mix.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question. The tech is there. The strategy on paper makes a lot of sense. But can a revolutionary idea like this actually survive a collision with the very bureaucracy it's meant to disrupt? The answer to that is probably going to shape the future of the US military for years to come.